The evening settles quietly over the long rows of brick houses. A thin layer of fog drifts through narrow streets where the day's footsteps have slowly faded away. The lamps glow softly behind curtains. A horse cart rattles somewhere in the distance, then disappears into the night. The air is cool. The city is growing silent. As darkness spreads across Victorian England, thousands of young people are preparing for another ordinary day tomorrow. Not a day of adventure. Not a day of leisure. Not a day filled with endless choices. For many young people living during the Victorian age, life moved along a narrow path. Time belonged to duty. Hours belonged to family, employers, teachers, workshops, farms, and factories. Childhood existed, but it looked very different from the way many people imagine it today. Tonight, we move slowly into that world. A world where free time often arrived in small pieces. A world where entertainment was simple. A world where even moments of rest could feel tied to responsibility. As the night deepens, imagine a quiet Victorian town sometime in the late 19th century. The streets are damp from an afternoon rain. Chimneys send thin streams of smoke into the dark sky. Most homes are lit by gas lamps or candles. The windows glow with warm yellow light. Inside one modest house, a young girl sits near the fireplace. She is not playing. Instead, she is mending clothing. Her fingers move carefully through worn fabric. She learned this skill years ago. Small tasks like sewing, darning socks, and repairing shirts are simply part of everyday life. Around her, the room is quiet. A clock ticks softly. The fire crackles. Her parents speak in low voices nearby. This evening activity may continue for hours. To many Victorian families, such work was not unusual. It was useful. It helped the household. It filled the evening. For countless young people, free time often blended together with practical tasks. A boy living in the same neighborhood might spend his evening polishing boots, organizing tools, or helping prepare supplies for the next day's work. The idea of entertainment often existed alongside responsibility. Even relaxation had purpose. Outside, the town settles further into silence. Most people cannot afford many luxuries. Books are treasured possessions when they are available. Newspapers are shared among family members. Toys may be handmade, repaired many times, and passed down between siblings. Because of this, young people become skilled at finding interest in ordinary things. A walk through town can become an event. Watching market workers unload goods can become an afternoon activity. Listening to older relatives tell stories may provide an entire evening of entertainment. Life moves more slowly. The pace itself shapes how time is experienced. During the Victorian period, many children begin contributing to family life at a young age. In rural villages, young boys and girls may help with farm work. Their days follow the rhythm of seasons rather than clocks. Long before sunrise, they wake beneath thick blankets. The room is cold. Frost sometimes forms along window edges during winter. A small wash basin waits nearby. The morning begins quietly. Outside, fields stretch into darkness. Gradually the first pale light appears. Birds begin calling from hedges. The countryside wakes. Work begins soon afterward. Some children help feed animals. Others gather eggs. Some assist with planting, harvesting, carrying water, or tending gardens. The work is rarely dramatic. Instead, it repeats day after day. Season after season. Year after year. There is comfort in routine. The same paths are walked. The same gates are opened. The same tools are carried. Free moments exist, but they are often woven between responsibilities. A child walking across a field may pause to watch clouds moving overhead. A group of siblings may laugh together while gathering vegetables. Simple moments become valuable because they are brief. Meanwhile, in growing industrial cities, a different rhythm shapes young lives. Factories dominate the landscape. Tall chimneys rise above rows of houses. Steam drifts into the air. Machines hum throughout the day. Many young people work long hours. Others attend school while also helping their families before and after lessons. The streets are crowded. Vendors call out their goods. Horse hooves strike cobblestones. Carts roll over uneven roads. Everywhere there is movement. Yet even here, moments of recreation appear. Young people gather in streets and courtyards whenever time allows. Simple games become popular because they require little equipment. A stone can become a target. A stick can become sporting equipment. An empty space can become a playground. Laughter echoes between brick walls. The games themselves are often forgotten by history. But the feeling remains familiar. A desire to enjoy a few moments before returning to duties. Many Victorian youths spend considerable time outdoors. Not because nature is always viewed as recreation. Rather, daily life naturally takes place outside. Errands require walking. Work requires walking. School requires walking. Visiting relatives requires walking. As a result, young people know their neighborhoods deeply. They recognize individual trees. They know which streets flood after rain. They know where cats sleep in sunny corners. They know which shopkeepers greet them kindly. The world feels smaller. Yet it is known intimately. Evening often becomes one of the most important parts of the day. Families gather indoors after work. The pace slows. Candles are lit. The sounds of industry fade. This is when stories emerge. Storytelling remains a powerful form of entertainment. Older family members share memories. Grandparents recall events from decades earlier. Parents describe their own childhood experiences. Local legends are repeated. Certain stories become family traditions. Children hear them many times. Yet they continue listening. The familiar words become comforting. Much like the steady ticking of a clock. Reading also becomes increasingly important during the Victorian era. Literacy rates rise over time. Books open doors to distant places. For young readers, a borrowed novel can provide weeks of enjoyment. Reading is often a shared experience. One family member may read aloud while others listen. The room remains quiet except for the voice of the reader and the occasional crackle from the fire. Outside, rain taps gently against windows. Inside, imaginations travel far beyond the small room. These evenings leave lasting memories. Not because of grand excitement, but because of their warmth, their steadiness, their sense of togetherness. For wealthier Victorian families, childhood looks somewhat different. Large homes offer more space. Education often occupies much of the day. Lessons may include languages, music, mathematics, history, and proper manners. Schedules remain structured. Time remains carefully organized. Even leisure is often supervised. A young girl may practice piano for hours. A young boy may spend afternoons studying classical texts. Activities considered enjoyable are frequently expected to build character, discipline, or knowledge. The Victorian world places great value on self-improvement. As a result, many young people spend free hours developing skills rather than seeking amusement. Crafts become popular. Drawing becomes popular. Collecting natural objects becomes popular. Pressed flowers fill notebooks. Interesting stones are saved. Shells from distant beaches become treasured possessions. These hobbies provide quiet satisfaction. They reward patience. They encourage observation. They fit comfortably within a culture that values order and restraint. As night settles deeper across towns and villages, countless young people prepare for sleep. Bedrooms vary greatly. Some sleep alone. Many share rooms with siblings. Others share beds. The sounds of the household gradually fade. Footsteps cease. Doors close. The fire burns lower. Outside, fog drifts through silent streets. Tomorrow will likely resemble today. The same routines. The same responsibilities. The same familiar places. Yet within those routines, young people continue finding small moments that belong only to them. A conversation with a friend. A favorite book. A game played after school. A story told beside the fire. A walk beneath a cloudy sky. These moments may seem ordinary. But ordinary moments often become the memories that last longest. And so the Victorian night grows quieter. The lamps dim. The streets empty. The city settles beneath darkness. Inside thousands of homes, young people drift toward sleep, carrying with them another day shaped not by endless enjoyment, but by habit, duty, family, and the gentle search for small pleasures hidden among everyday life. The clock continues ticking softly. The fire glows faintly. And beyond the windows, the long Victorian night stretches peacefully onward. The night deepens further now, and the silence outside Victorian homes becomes heavier, softer, almost like a blanket settling over the streets. Gas lamps continue to burn in quiet rows, their light flickering gently against damp stone walls. Somewhere far away, a bell rings once, marking the passing of time, then fades into the still air. Inside the homes, sleep has not fully arrived yet. There are still small movements, quiet routines, the last pieces of the day being gently put away. A young boy sits near a wooden table, his shoulders slightly hunched from the weight of the day. His hands are stained faintly from ink or dirt, depending on where he spent his hours. He is not thinking of rest yet. Instead, he is preparing small things for tomorrow. A satchel is placed carefully beside a chair. A pair of worn shoes are set near the door. Everything is arranged with quiet attention, as if disorder itself would bring unnecessary trouble into the morning. In another corner of the house, a mother folds clothing slowly. The fabric is rough, slightly faded from repeated washing. A young girl watches nearby, learning without words. There is no formal instruction in this moment, only observation. The rhythm of folding, smoothing, stacking becomes familiar in a way that feels almost like memory being written gently into the mind. Victorian youth often grow into responsibility in this quiet manner. Not through sudden lessons, but through repeated, ordinary evenings like this one. Outside, the air cools further. In industrial towns, the sound of machinery has finally stopped. Factories that filled the day with constant movement now stand still. Their tall chimneys rise into the darkness like silent towers. The streets around them are empty except for a few late travelers returning home with slow, tired steps. Earlier in the day, many young people would have been inside those buildings, working beside machines that never seem to rest. The hours there feel long, not because they are counted, but because they are experienced in repetition. The same motion, the same task, the same steady rhythm of labor. Yet even after such days, life does not end in exhaustion alone. It transitions. Evening brings a quieter world. For some, it is a brief return to family. For others, it is a shared room where several children sleep together, their breathing gradually sinking into a soft, uneven rhythm through the night. Before sleep arrives, there is often a small meal. Nothing elaborate. Simple bread. Thin soup. Perhaps a piece of fruit if the season allows it. The warmth of food brings a gentle pause to the evening. Steam rises briefly from wooden bowls. Hands warm themselves near cups before the cold returns. Conversation during these hours is soft and unhurried. Words are not wasted. They are used carefully, like the remaining light of a candle. A father may speak about the next day's work. A mother may mention small tasks that need attention. Children listen more than they speak, their thoughts drifting between awareness and sleepiness. In rural villages, the same evening calm unfolds in a different setting. The countryside is quieter than the towns, but not empty of sound. There is the distant rustle of leaves. The occasional call of an animal. The slow movement of wind across fields that have already been harvested or prepared for planting. Young people who worked on farms earlier in the day feel the weight of physical labor in their bodies. Their hands carry the memory of soil. Their shoulders feel heavy in a way that only long hours outdoors can create. Still, the evening offers a small kind of peace. A bench near a doorway becomes a place of rest. A step outside the home becomes a place to breathe cool air. The sky above, now dark and wide, becomes a quiet companion. In these rural homes, storytelling often becomes the center of evening life. Not structured stories. Not written ones. But spoken memories. A grandfather recalls a winter long ago when the snow came early. A mother remembers a market day filled with heavy rain and laughter. A neighbor shares a tale about a journey to a nearby village. These stories move slowly, with pauses between them. They are not meant to impress. They are meant to pass time gently. And in doing so, they shape how young minds understand the world. Education during the Victorian era brings another layer to youth life. For many children, school is a place of order and quiet discipline. Wooden desks arranged in rows. Ink bottles placed carefully beside notebooks. The soft scratching of pens across paper. The occasional sound of a teacher's footsteps moving between seats. Lessons are structured and repetitive. Writing lines. Reading aloud. Memorizing passages. Solving simple arithmetic. There is a steady rhythm to it, almost like breathing. For some children, school feels like a separate world from home. A world with different rules, but similar expectations. Focus. Patience. Quiet attention. Between lessons, small breaks offer brief moments of relief. A few minutes outside in a courtyard. A chance to stretch tired arms. A moment to speak softly with friends before returning inside. These interactions are simple, but meaningful. They create small bonds that help pass the long structure of the day. After school, the return home is often not the end of responsibility. Many children continue helping with chores. Fetching water from wells or pumps. Carrying small bundles of firewood. Assisting in kitchens where meals are prepared slowly over open heat. The air inside these spaces is warm and filled with the scent of cooking grains, vegetables, or bread baking on simple surfaces. Smoke may drift upward, leaving faint traces in the corners of ceilings. Time here does not feel rushed. It moves with the pace of preparation. Dough resting. Water boiling. Fire settling. Waiting becomes part of the process. And in that waiting, young people learn patience without being told directly. In more urban settings, some youth find brief moments of leisure in public spaces. A small group might gather near a street corner after their tasks are finished. They talk quietly, leaning against walls or sitting on steps. Their conversations are not always about important things. Sometimes they are about nothing at all. Observations from the day. A passing card. A shopkeeper's remark. The weather. Children sometimes invent games from whatever is nearby. A stick rolled along the ground. A coin tossed and caught. A simple race down a narrow lane before returning home at the sound of a voice calling from a doorway. These small moments of play exist, but they are never fully separated from responsibility. They appear between duties, like brief openings in a long, steady pattern of life. As night continues to deepen, Victorian homes grow quieter once again. Lamps are dimmed. Candles shortened. Rooms become filled with soft shadows. Beds are prepared carefully. Blankets are arranged. Clothing is folded and placed nearby for the morning. In shared rooms, siblings settle into familiar positions. There is little space, but there is routine. Everyone knows where they belong in the small geography of sleep. The sounds of the house change slowly. From activity to stillness. From speech to silence. From movement to rest. Outside, the world continues its quiet presence. The streets remain still. The air remains cool. The night remains long and steady. And within this stillness, Victorian youth drift closer to sleep, carrying with them another day shaped by simple tasks, quiet routines, and the gentle rhythm of a life that moves forward one ordinary moment at a time. The night has now fully settled over the Victorian world, and it feels deeper than before, as if even the air itself has slowed. Streets that were once full of movement during the day now lie still beneath a quiet darkness. Gas lamps continue to glow softly, but their light feels distant, almost gentle, as if it belongs more to memory than to the present moment. Inside the homes, sleep comes in slow waves. Not suddenly. Not all at once. But gradually, as if the body itself is learning to let go of the day. In a small upstairs room, a young boy lies beneath a thick wool blanket. The fabric feels slightly rough against his skin, yet it is warm, and warmth is what matters most during these quiet nights. His eyes are open for a while, watching the faint shape of shadows moving across the ceiling. The shadows come from a candle that was recently extinguished in another room, its last trace still lingering in memory. Beside him, another child shifts slightly in sleep. Their breathing is soft, uneven, then steady again. The room is simple. Wooden floorboards. A small window with thin curtains. A few personal belongings placed neatly along the edges of the space. Everything has its place, not because of decoration, but because order makes small rooms easier to live in. Downstairs, the house remains gently alive. A final kettle is lifted from a hook. Water is poured quietly into a basin. A cloth is folded once more. These small acts are not rushed. They belong to the end of the day, where even the smallest movements feel like part of a slow farewell to wakefulness. Victorian youth often grow up surrounded by this kind of rhythm. A rhythm that does not separate life into sharp moments of excitement and rest, but blends them together into a steady flow of duty, preparation, and brief stillness. Even sleep feels like part of routine rather than escape. Outside, the wind moves lightly through narrow streets. It brushes against brick walls, slides over stone pathways, and passes through small gaps between buildings. It carries the faint scent of coal smoke that still lingers in the air, even after the fires have been reduced for the night. In larger towns, the silence is not complete. There are occasional distant sounds. A door closing far away. The faint echo of footsteps that quickly fade. A dog shifting in its sleep somewhere unseen. But these sounds are rare and brief, like small interruptions in a larger silence that cannot be broken easily. In rural areas, the night feels even more complete. Fields lie still beneath the dark sky. Crops that were once active with human hands during the day now rest quietly. Farmhouses glow faintly from within, their windows like small lanterns in the vastness of the countryside. Young people in these homes often fall asleep early. Their days begin before sunrise, and their bodies learn to follow the sun's rhythm rather than the clock. Sleep, for them, is not a choice. It is a return. A return to rest after long hours of physical effort. A return to warmth after exposure to cold air, wind, or heat depending on the season. A return to silence after a day filled with natural sound and labor. In industrial neighborhoods, sleep arrives under different conditions. The houses are closer together. The streets narrower. The air sometimes heavier with the memory of smoke and machinery. Yet even here, there is a kind of comfort in repetition. Children who live in these places grow familiar with the sound of distant factory whistles during the day. At night, the absence of those sounds becomes its own kind of signal. It means the day has truly ended. It means rest is allowed. In many homes, beds are shared. Siblings lie close together, not just for warmth, but because space itself is limited. This closeness creates a quiet sense of safety. Breathing patterns blend. Movements become shared. Even dreams, in a way, feel like they exist in the same small space. Before sleep fully takes hold, there is often a final moment of thought. Not structured thinking. Not planning. But drifting awareness. A memory of something small from earlier in the day. A conversation near a doorway. A sound heard in the street. The feeling of sunlight on hands during work or travel. These fragments float gently through the mind before dissolving into rest. Victorian youth rarely experience long stretches of unoccupied time during waking hours. Because of this, imagination often grows in quiet, subtle ways. It appears during waiting. During walking. During repetitive tasks. During moments when hands are busy but the mind is free to wander slightly. A child carrying water may imagine distant places beyond the village. A young worker might think about rivers they have never seen, or cities described in books or stories. A student may drift into thoughts between lines of writing, letting words become shapes rather than meaning. But these thoughts do not usually lead to escape. They return gently to reality. To the task at hand. To the rhythm of daily life. In this way, imagination becomes something soft and quiet, not separate from life, but woven into it. As the night continues, Victorian homes grow even more still. The last lamps are extinguished. The final footsteps upstairs fade. Doors are closed softly, with care not to disturb others. The house becomes a single, quiet structure filled with sleeping lives. Outside, the moon moves slowly across the sky, casting pale light onto rooftops and chimneys. The light is not bright, but it is steady, and it gives the night a sense of gentle direction. In some rooms, windows remain slightly open, allowing cool air to enter. Curtains shift faintly with the breeze. The sound is soft enough to blend into sleep rather than interrupt it. Time itself feels different at this hour. It no longer measures tasks or duties. It simply passes. Slowly. Evenly. Without urgency. In this stillness, Victorian youth continue sleeping, each one surrounded by the quiet patterns of their daily life. The structure of their world follows them even into rest. Familiar sounds, familiar rooms, familiar rhythms all fade into the background of sleep like distant echoes. And so the night continues, uninterrupted, carrying them forward gently, while the world outside remains calm and dark, waiting for the first faint signs of morning that are still far away. The Victorian night continues its slow movement, stretching quietly over towns, villages, and fields that lie still beneath a calm sky. The darkness is no longer something noticed. It has become the natural shape of the world at this hour, wrapping everything in a familiar silence that feels steady rather than empty. Inside the homes, sleep has deepened. Breathing has slowed. Bodies have settled. The long day is now fully behind them. In one small farmhouse, a young girl shifts slightly in her sleep. Her hands, which spent the earlier hours helping with simple farm tasks, now rest loosely against the edge of a blanket. There is still a faint sense of movement in her fingers, as if the memory of work has not yet fully left her body. Nearby, the rest of her family sleeps in the same room. The space is shared, warm, and close. The walls are thick enough to keep out the cold, but not thick enough to remove the feeling of the outside world entirely. Wind still finds small ways to pass through the structure, creating soft changes in temperature that come and go like gentle waves. In Victorian life, sleep is often practical. It is not treated as something separate from daily survival. It is part of the cycle that allows work to continue the next day. Rest is necessary, but it is also simple. There is no excess. No comfort beyond what is needed. Yet within that simplicity, there is a quiet kind of peace. In towns, the atmosphere is slightly different, but the feeling of night remains the same. Rows of houses stand close together, their roofs forming uneven lines against the sky. Chimneys are dark now, no longer releasing smoke. The day's labor has fully ended, and even the buildings seem to rest. In one such home, a young boy lies awake for a moment longer than the others. Not restless. Just aware. He listens to the quiet sounds of the house settling. A faint creak in the wooden structure. The distant sound of wind passing between buildings. The soft, almost invisible rhythm of the world outside. He does not think in detailed thoughts. Instead, his mind drifts in gentle fragments. A moment from earlier in the day. A brief exchange of words. The feeling of cold air on his face while walking home. These small memories rise and fade without effort, like ripples on still water. Soon, even these thoughts begin to dissolve. And sleep arrives without announcement. In Victorian households, nighttime routines are often consistent. They do not change much from day to day. This repetition creates a sense of predictability that shapes how young people understand time. Evening meals. Simple cleaning. Preparation for the next day. Quiet conversation. Then sleep. The pattern repeats. Not in a harsh or strict way, but in a steady rhythm that becomes part of life itself. Outside, the streets remain empty. Gas lamps continue their soft glow, but fewer now, as some have already been dimmed for the night. Their light reflects gently off wet stone and wooden surfaces, creating small pools of brightness surrounded by darkness. Occasionally, a night traveler passes through. A late worker returning home. A caretaker moving between duties. Their footsteps echo briefly, then fade again into silence. The Victorian world at night is not loud or chaotic. It is measured. It is still. It breathes slowly. In rural landscapes, the experience of night feels even more expansive. Fields stretch far into the distance, disappearing into darkness. Trees stand quietly, their shapes softened by moonlight. Animals rest in hidden places, their presence only suggested by occasional movement or sound. Young people in these areas often fall asleep early, their bodies aligned with natural light. The day begins with sunrise and ends not long after sunset. This rhythm shapes their sense of time more than any clock. Even dreams, in such environments, feel gentle and unhurried. There is no rush in the night. Only continuation. In some homes, candles are still burning faintly in the last moments before being fully extinguished. Their light flickers softly against walls, creating shifting patterns that slowly disappear as the flame grows smaller. A hand reaches out. The flame is gently covered. And the room becomes darker. Not suddenly, but gradually, as if the darkness itself is arriving with care. This final moment of light disappearing is often the true beginning of sleep. In Victorian youth, much of life is learned through observation rather than instruction. They watch adults. They follow routines. They repeat small actions until they become natural. Work is learned this way. Care is learned this way. Rest is learned this way. Even how to sit quietly, how to wait, how to move slowly through tasks without urgency, all of it becomes part of daily life. Because of this, the boundary between childhood and adulthood is not sharply defined. It fades gradually, like evening light blending into night. As sleep deepens across homes, dreams begin to form in quiet layers. Not vivid or dramatic dreams, but soft and simple ones. A walk through familiar streets. A field seen during the day. A voice heard earlier. A place remembered without detail. These dreams are shaped by repetition, just like waking life. And they carry no urgency. Outside, the Victorian world remains unchanged through the night. The same streets. The same rooftops. The same fields and rivers resting beneath the sky. Everything continues in stillness, waiting for morning without expectation. Time moves forward slowly. Almost imperceptibly. And within that movement, young lives rest gently, held by the quiet structure of their world. There is no need to rush. No need to change. Only the steady passing of night. And the calm certainty that morning will come again, as it always does, bringing another day shaped by the same familiar rhythm of duty, small moments, and quiet passing time. The night has grown deeper now, reaching its quietest point, where even the smallest sounds feel distant and softened. The Victorian world rests under a steady darkness that seems to stretch endlessly in every direction, covering towns, villages, and farmland alike in the same calm stillness. Inside the homes, sleep continues without interruption. It is no longer light sleep or half-awareness. It is the deeper stage, where the body no longer responds to the passing of time in any noticeable way. In a narrow city house, a young boy sleeps on a thin mattress placed carefully against the floor. The room is shared with others, but the closeness no longer feels important in this moment. Each person is wrapped in their own quiet world of rest. The air is still, slightly cool, and carries the faint memory of the day's activity. Somewhere in the house, a floorboard creaks softly. No one wakes. The sound becomes part of the night itself, absorbed into the silence. In Victorian life, sleep is rarely luxurious, but it is consistent. It arrives after labor, after routine, after repetition. It is something expected, something dependable, something that closes each day without ceremony. In rural homes, the night feels wider. A farmhouse stands quietly near open fields, its windows glowing faintly from the last traces of warmth inside. The wind moves slowly across the land, brushing against tall grass and empty paths. There is no urgency in the movement of air. It passes as if it has nowhere else to be. Inside, a family sleeps in shared quietness. Beds are close together. Blankets are thick. The warmth is shared rather than individual. The rhythm of breathing becomes the only measure of time that remains. Earlier in the evening, these same hands had worked through simple tasks. Now they rest without awareness of them. The contrast between labor and sleep is gentle, not sudden. One flows into the other without clear separation. In Victorian towns, faint light still lingers in a few places. Not from candles or lamps inside homes, but from distant sources that have not yet fully faded. A street light that was left burning a little longer than others. A reflection on damp stone that catches the remaining glow of the sky. But even this light feels weak now. The world is turning inward. Becoming quieter with each passing moment. In some homes, especially those with young children, sleep is occasionally interrupted by small movements. A child shifts position. A blanket is adjusted. A quiet breath deepens and then steadies again. These are not disturbances. They are part of sleep itself. A natural adjustment to the body's need for comfort. In Victorian youth, comfort is simple. It is not built from excess or softness, but from familiarity. A known blanket. A known corner of a room. A known position beside a sibling or parent. These small certainties create a sense of safety that does not require explanation. Outside, the night remains unchanged. But within it, everything slowly prepares for the return of morning. Not consciously. Not visibly. But in the natural rhythm of time itself. The air grows slightly cooler in the deepest hours before dawn. The sky begins its long, gradual shift, though it is still far too early to notice any difference. The world continues to rest, unaware of the change that is slowly forming beyond sight. In one small town home, a young girl briefly stirs in her sleep. Her eyes do not open. Her movement is small and unimportant. She turns slightly toward the warmth of the blanket and settles again. The motion is almost like a continuation of dreaming rather than a return to wakefulness. Dreams in this quiet world remain soft and unshaped. They do not demand attention. They do not rush. They simply pass through the mind like slow-moving water. A memory of walking through a familiar street. The sound of a voice heard earlier in the day. The feeling of sitting near a window while light faded outside. These fragments do not form stories. They dissolve gently instead. In industrial neighborhoods, sleep carries a slightly different weight. The buildings are closer together, and the air sometimes feels heavier even at night. But the silence is still present. It settles over everything like dust after movement has ended. Inside these homes, exhaustion often leads to deeper sleep. The body, having spent the day in repetition and effort, falls into rest quickly and without resistance. There is no struggle against the night. Only acceptance. And then stillness. Victorian youth, across all environments, share this quiet cycle. Work. Routine. Brief moments of stillness. And then sleep. It is not a life defined by excitement, but by repetition that creates its own rhythm of understanding. Days become familiar not because they are identical, but because they follow a predictable shape. And in that predictability, there is a kind of comfort that is easy to overlook. As the night reaches its deepest point, even the idea of time begins to feel less important. Clocks continue to exist, but they are not heard. Schedules continue to exist, but they are not felt. Only the present moment remains, and even that begins to soften at the edges. In homes across the Victorian world, young people sleep without awareness of distance or difference between places. Cities, villages, farms all feel the same in sleep. Quiet. Still. Resting. And so the night continues its long, unbroken flow, holding everything in a gentle pause until the first faint suggestion of morning begins, still far away, still unseen, but already quietly on its way. The deepest hours of the Victorian night settle gently over everything now, like a slow-moving tide that covers the world without sound. The darkness outside is no longer something noticeable or separate. It feels complete, as if it has always been here and will remain for a long time still. Inside the homes, sleep has reached its quietest form. It is no longer marked by movement or thought. It is only rest, steady and uninterrupted, the kind that fills a room without needing to be seen. In a small upstairs bedroom in a townhouse, a young boy sleeps with his arm resting loosely across the edge of a blanket. His breathing is slow and even. The faint light from outside, carried through a thin curtain, touches the wall in a soft gray shape that barely shifts as the night passes. Nothing in the room demands attention. A pair of shoes rests neatly near the bed. A folded shirt sits on a chair. A small wooden shelf holds a few simple belongings, arranged not for display but for ease. Everything belongs to the rhythm of ordinary life. And now, everything rests. Outside, the streets are almost entirely still. The gas lamps that remain lit seem smaller than before, their glow softened by distance and time. They do not push back the darkness. They simply exist within it, like quiet reminders that the world is still present beneath the night. Occasionally, the wind moves through narrow alleys. It brushes against stone, slips past doorways, and travels along rooftops. It carries no message. It asks for nothing. It passes through the Victorian world as if it belongs to it, as if it has always known its way. In rural areas, the silence is even more complete. Fields stretch outward into darkness that feels endless. Trees stand in scattered groups, their shapes barely visible except where the moonlight briefly outlines them. Farmhouses glow faintly, small points of warmth in wide open space. Inside those homes, families sleep closely together. There is a shared warmth that comes not only from blankets, but from proximity itself. The closeness of bodies in a small space creates a quiet sense of safety that does not need to be spoken. A child shifts slightly. An adult turns in sleep. A blanket slips and is pulled back into place. These movements are small and natural, woven into the long stillness of the night. In Victorian life, nights are not separated from the rest of existence in any dramatic way. They are simply another phase of the same steady cycle. Work leads to evening. Evening leads to rest. Rest leads back to work again. There is comfort in this repetition. Not excitement. Not change. But predictability. In industrial towns, the night carries a faint memory of the day's noise, even after everything has stopped. It is not actual sound that remains, but an impression of it. The mind of the town seems to remember the machines, the footsteps, the distant calls. Now, however, all of it is gone. What remains is silence layered over silence. Inside crowded homes, sleep is deep and uninterrupted. Many young people share small spaces, yet the closeness no longer feels like limitation during the night. It becomes part of the natural order of things. Shoulder near shoulder. Breathing near breathing. Stillness shared among many. In the deepest part of the night, dreams continue in their quiet way. They do not arrive like stories. They drift in gently, shaped by fragments of memory and experience. A face seen during the day. A sound from a passing cart. The feeling of sunlight fading slowly at the end of work. These fragments do not form meaning that is remembered clearly upon waking. They simply pass through the mind, soft and unformed, like mist moving across a field. In this way, even sleep reflects the simplicity of daily life. Nothing excessive. Nothing overwhelming. Only continuation. Far above the sleeping world, the sky begins its slow and almost invisible shift. It is still dark, still deep, still heavy with night. But somewhere beyond awareness, the earliest signs of change are forming. Not yet dawn. Not yet morning. Only the quiet preparation for what will eventually come. Inside the homes, no one notices this shift. There is no need to. Sleep continues without interruption. In a small rural farmhouse, a young girl turns slightly onto her side. Her movement is slow and unthinking, guided only by comfort. The blanket around her adjusts naturally with her, settling again into place. The room remains warm. The air remains still. Outside, the wind continues its soft passage across the fields. Time moves forward, but it does so gently, without urgency, without announcement. In Victorian youth, even the idea of time is shaped by routine. Days feel similar not because nothing changes, but because change itself follows familiar patterns. Morning arrives. Work begins. Afternoon continues. Evening settles. Night arrives. And then everything rests. This structure becomes so natural that it is rarely questioned. It simply is. As the night approaches its final hours, the world reaches its quietest point once again. Not because anything changes suddenly, but because everything has already slowed to its lowest possible rhythm. Even thought feels distant. Even awareness feels soft. And in homes across the Victorian world, young people remain asleep, carried by the steady rhythm of a life that moves forward one calm, ordinary day at a time. Nothing demands attention. Nothing interrupts. Only the quiet passage of night continues, holding everything in place until the first faint hint of morning eventually begins to appear far beyond the edge of sleep. The night now rests in its final stretch, where everything feels still enough that even silence seems to have settled into itself. The Victorian world remains covered in darkness, but it is no longer a heavy darkness. It is soft now, stretched thin, beginning to loosen at the edges in ways that are not yet visible, only felt in the quietest parts of the night. Inside the homes, sleep continues without change. It has become deep, steady, and uninterrupted, like a long river flowing without movement on its surface. In a narrow townhouse, a young boy sleeps with his face turned slightly toward the wall. His breathing is calm. His body is still. The blanket over him rises and falls in a slow rhythm that matches the quiet of the room. Nothing disturbs him. Not sound. Not light. Not thought. The world outside remains distant, separated by layers of stone, wood, and silence. Downstairs, the house is equally still. Chairs remain where they were left. A kettle sits cold on a hook. A few small items rest on tables, untouched since the evening ended. Everything is waiting, but nothing feels impatient. Victorian homes at night carry the sense of paused existence. Not empty. Not alive in motion. but suspended in a gentle balance between yesterday and tomorrow. In rural spaces, the final hours of night feel even wider. Fields stretch out beneath a sky that is still dark, but no longer completely heavy. The air is cooler here, more open, moving gently across the land without obstruction. Trees stand quietly, their outlines faint against the horizon. Inside a farmhouse, a family sleeps close together in shared warmth. The room is simple, shaped by function rather than decoration. Wooden beams overhead. A small window that lets in faint traces of night air. Blankets layered carefully to preserve heat. A child stirs slightly, then becomes still again. The movement is small enough to blend into the rhythm of sleep itself. In Victorian life, such nights are common. They are not marked by comfort in the modern sense, but by familiarity. The body learns the shape of rest through repetition. The mind accepts it without question. Outside in towns, the last gas lamps continue to burn. Their light is weaker now, not because the flame has changed, but because the night is slowly loosening its hold. The darkness is still present, but it is no longer absolute. A faint suggestion of change moves through the sky. It is not yet morning. Not yet even close. But something in the atmosphere begins to shift in a way that only time can understand. In industrial neighborhoods, the silence is layered and thick. These are places that once held constant motion during the day. Machines, footsteps, voices, and smoke filled the air. Now, all of it is absent, leaving behind only the memory of activity. Inside the homes nearby, sleep remains deep and uninterrupted. Many young people rest after long hours of work, their bodies falling into stillness quickly, as if the moment they lie down, the day is fully released. There is no resistance. Only surrender to rest. Dreams continue to drift through this quiet world. They are not formed with clarity. They are shaped from fragments that appear and dissolve without effort. A street scene while walking. A sound heard from a passing cart. A simple image of light on stone. These fragments do not remain. They pass through the mind like gentle currents beneath a still surface. As the night slowly edges forward, the Victorian world remains unchanged in structure but softened in presence. Everything still exists as it did during the day, but nothing is active within it. It is a world resting within itself. Time continues to move, but it does so quietly, almost invisibly. In one small room, a young girl turns her head slightly in sleep, pressing closer into the warmth of her blanket. The fabric shifts softly with her movement, then settles again. No awareness follows. Only comfort. Only rest. Above all this, the sky begins its slow transformation, though it is still far too subtle to be called dawn. It is a change that exists more in feeling than in sight. A gradual easing of darkness, a soft thinning of night. But within the homes, no one notices. There is no need to. Sleep holds them fully now. Across towns, villages, and farms, Victorian youth remain in the same shared condition. Resting. Quiet. Unaware of the passage of hours. Held within the steady rhythm of a world that has not changed in structure, only in time. And so the night continues forward, gentle and unbroken, carrying everything toward the earliest suggestion of morning that still waits somewhere beyond the horizon, unseen, patient, and calm. The final hours of the Victorian night feel softer now, as if the darkness itself has grown tired and begun to loosen its grip on the world. Everything remains quiet, but the silence is no longer heavy. It is lighter, almost fragile, as though it could be disturbed by the smallest change in the air. Inside the homes, sleep continues without interruption. It is deep, steady, and unbroken, shaped by long days of repetition and simple routine. In a small town bedroom, a young boy lies on his side beneath a worn blanket. His face is calm. His breathing is slow. The room around him is still, holding him gently in place. A faint trace of cool air slips through a gap in the window, moving the curtain slightly before it settles again. Nothing in the room demands attention. Everything is quiet. Everything is resting. Downstairs, the house remains unchanged. The objects of daily life sit exactly where they were left the night before. A chair near the table. A folded cloth. A cup turned upside down. These small details feel almost frozen in time, as if the entire home is holding its breath until morning arrives. In rural areas, the same stillness stretches across open land. Fields lie undisturbed beneath a sky that is slowly, almost imperceptibly, lightening at its edges. The change is not yet visible to the eye, but it exists in the feeling of the air itself, which seems less heavy than before. Inside a farmhouse, a family continues to sleep in shared warmth. The room is simple, filled with the quiet presence of resting bodies. A child shifts slightly, then becomes still again. An adult turns gently, adjusting to the shape of the bed. These movements are not disruptions. They are part of sleep's natural rhythm. In Victorian life, the night is not a separate world. It is part of the same continuous cycle that governs everything else. Work leads into evening. Evening leads into rest. Rest leads back into morning. There are no sudden breaks in this rhythm, only smooth transitions that feel almost invisible when lived from day to day. In towns, gas lamps still glow faintly, though many have begun to dim as the night approaches its end. Their light reflects weakly against damp stone and quiet streets. Shadows are still present, but they are softer now, less defined, as if the edges of the world are beginning to blur. The wind moves gently through narrow streets, but even it feels slower than before. It passes without urgency, brushing against walls and disappearing into distance without sound. In industrial neighborhoods, sleep remains deep and steady. The long hours of labor from earlier in the day have settled into the bodies of young workers, drawing them into rest without resistance. There is no struggle against sleep here, only the natural release that follows exhaustion. The buildings that once echoed with machinery now hold only stillness. Inside, the shared rooms are quiet. Beds close together. Breathing slow and even. The closeness of others becomes part of the comfort of sleep, though it is not consciously noticed. Dreams continue to drift through this still world. They are soft and unformed, built from small impressions of daily life. A path walked earlier in the day. A voice heard at a distance. A moment of light falling across a wall. These fragments do not form stories. They appear and dissolve gently, like mist touching water. Above the sleeping world, the sky begins its slow return toward morning. It is not yet dawn. Not yet light. But something subtle has changed in its depth. The darkness is no longer absolute. It begins to thin in ways that are almost impossible to notice unless watched for a long time. Time continues its steady movement forward, but without urgency. Without sound. Without interruption. In a small room, a young girl breathes deeply in her sleep, her hand resting near the edge of a blanket. The fabric rises and falls with her breath, creating a quiet rhythm that matches the stillness of the house. Nothing disturbs her. Nothing calls her. Only rest remains. Across the Victorian world, this same quiet pattern continues in countless homes. Youth sleeping in shared rooms. Youth sleeping alone. Youth resting after long hours of work, study, or simple routine. Each one held within the same gentle silence that defines the final part of the night. There is no awareness of time passing. Only the feeling of stillness. Only the weight of sleep. And so the night continues to move forward, softer now than before, guiding everything toward the distant edge of morning that has not yet arrived, but is slowly, quietly, inevitably on its way. The night is almost finished now, though nothing in the Victorian world announces this change. There is no clear signal, no sudden shift, only a quiet easing of darkness that feels like the world slowly letting go of sleep while still holding onto it for a little longer. Inside the homes, the deepest rest continues. It is the kind of sleep that no longer feels connected to time. Hours pass, but they are not felt. The body remains still, steady, and calm, as if it has fully accepted the shape of the night. In a modest townhouse, a young boy sleeps with his blanket drawn close around him. His face is relaxed. His breathing is even. The room around him is quiet in a way that feels complete, as though even the air has learned not to move too much. A faint sound of wind passes outside, brushing softly against the building, then fading again into silence. No one stirs. No one wakes. In Victorian homes, this final stage of night is often the most peaceful. Not because anything has changed, but because everything has settled fully into place. There are no more adjustments, no more movements, no more thoughts drifting near wakefulness. Only rest remains. In rural homes, the same stillness stretches across wide open land. Fields lie quiet beneath a sky that is slowly beginning to soften at its edges. The change is so gradual it is almost unnoticeable, more felt than seen. Inside a farmhouse, a family sleeps in shared warmth. The room is close and simple. Wooden beams overhead. Blankets layered against the night air. The presence of others nearby creates a quiet sense of safety that continues even in sleep. A child turns slightly, then settles again without awareness. The rhythm of breathing continues evenly through the room. Nothing interrupts it. Outside, the land remains still. Trees stand in dark silhouettes. Paths remain empty. The wind moves lightly, but even it feels slower now, as if it too is waiting for something. In towns, the gas lamps continue to fade in importance. Their glow is weaker now, no longer pushing back the darkness, but simply existing within it. The streets they illuminate feel less like places of activity and more like quiet corridors between night and morning. The Victorian world at this hour feels suspended. Not moving forward quickly. Not remaining still completely. But drifting gently between two states. In industrial neighborhoods, sleep remains deep and uninterrupted. The bodies of young workers rest heavily after long days of effort. There is no tension left in them now, no resistance. Only the natural stillness that comes when exhaustion finally releases its hold. Rooms are close and shared, yet quiet in a way that feels almost complete. Even the smallest sounds are absorbed by the thickness of sleep. Dreams continue in their soft, unshaped form. They do not create stories that last beyond waking. They are brief impressions, fading almost as soon as they appear. A light seen through a window. A street corner remembered without detail. A feeling of walking without urgency. These fragments drip through the mind and dissolve. Above everything, the sky continues its slow transformation. Still dark, still quiet, but no longer fully heavy. The night is beginning to loosen, not enough to be seen clearly, but enough to be sensed in the air. Time moves forward without announcement. Without interruption. Without awareness from those below. In one small room, a young girl breathes softly in sleep. Her hand rests near her face, her body still and comfortable beneath the blanket. The room around her remains unchanged, holding the same quiet presence it has held throughout the night. Nothing disturbs her rest. Nothing calls her back. Only the steady rhythm of sleep continues. Across towns, villages, and fields, Victorian youth remain in the same shared condition. Sleeping. Resting. Unaware of the passing hours. Held within a world that is slowly, gently preparing to turn toward morning. And so the night continues its final movement, soft and unbroken, carrying everything toward the first faint edge of dawn that is still just beyond reach, waiting quietly at the end of darkness. The night now feels at its quietest edge, where everything is so still that even the idea of movement seems distant. The Victorian world remains wrapped in darkness, but it is no longer the same deep darkness that covered the earlier hours. It is lighter now, softened, stretched thin like fabric gently pulled toward morning. Inside the homes, sleep continues without change. It is steady, deep, unbroken. In a small town bedroom, a young boy lies completely still beneath a blanket that has settled naturally around him through the night. His breathing is slow and even. His face shows no tension, only the quiet calm of rest that has carried on for hours without interruption. The room is silent in a complete way, not because nothing exists within it, but because everything has paused. A chair remains where it was left. A small shelf holds simple belongings. A faint outline of moonlight rests against the wall, now weaker than before, as if even it is beginning to fade. Outside, the wind moves once, gently, then disappears again into stillness. No one in the house wakes. No one stirs. The night continues its final slow passage. In rural areas, the landscape is calm and wide, stretching beneath a sky that is now subtly shifting toward the earliest suggestion of morning. It is not light yet. Not even close. But the darkness has changed its character. It feels less heavy, more open, as if the world is preparing to breathe again. Inside a farmhouse, a family remains asleep in shared quietness. The room is simple, shaped by necessity rather than comfort. Warmth is held within layers of blankets and the closeness of sleeping bodies. A child turns slightly, pressing deeper into the warmth nearby. An adult exhales slowly and remains still. These movements are small and natural, part of sleep's quiet rhythm that continues without awareness. In Victorian life, this final stage of night is often the most consistent across all places. Whether in towns or villages, whether in small homes or crowded ones, the pattern remains the same. Sleep deepens, holds, and then slowly begins to loosen as morning approaches. In industrial neighborhoods, the silence is layered with the memory of the day before. Factories stand still, their chimneys dark and unmoving. Streets that were once full of activity now feel almost distant from their own daytime identity. Inside nearby homes, young workers continue to sleep deeply. Their bodies remain heavy with rest, shaped by long hours of physical effort. There is no resistance in their sleep, only the natural stillness that comes when exhaustion has fully settled. Rooms are shared, but quiet. Close, but calm. Even the smallest sounds are absorbed by the depth of rest. Dreams continue, but they are fading now, becoming lighter, less defined. They no longer hold even the soft structure they had earlier in the night. They become impressions. Then fragments. Then nothing at all. Above the sleeping world, the sky has begun its slowest and most delicate transformation. It is still dark, still quiet, but no longer absolute. Somewhere beyond awareness, the night is beginning to give way, not with force, but with patience. Time moves forward without being felt, without being noticed, without resistance. In one quiet room, a young girl lies still beneath her blanket. Her breathing is calm, her body relaxed, her presence almost entirely merged with the stillness of the room. Nothing around her changes. Nothing interrupts the rhythm of sleep. She remains there, held gently in rest, as the night continues its final movement toward morning. Across the Victorian world, this same stillness exists in countless homes. Children, teenagers, young workers all resting in the same quiet pattern. Each one carried through the night by the familiar rhythm of daily life, where work, routine, and rest flow into each other without sharp boundaries. And now, as the darkness begins its final soft release, the world remains quiet one last time. Not ending. Not beginning. Only continuing, gently, toward the first faint breath of morning that is still just out of reach, waiting beyond the edge of sleep. The night is now at its thinnest point, where darkness no longer feels complete, but instead feels gently worn, as if it has been stretched across too many hours and is now slowly loosening its hold on the world. Everything remains quiet, but the quiet is different here. It carries the feeling of transition, even if nothing has yet visibly changed. Inside the homes, sleep continues in its deepest and most settled form. It is no longer shaped by dreams or movement or even awareness. It is simply rest, steady and complete, like a long pause held across an entire world. In a small town house, a young boy sleeps on his side, his blanket slightly folded at the edge where he moved earlier in the night. His face is calm. His breathing is slow. There is a faint softness in the air of the room, as if the space itself has grown used to stillness and now maintains it without effort. A weak trace of early light begins to appear near the edge of the window, though it is not strong enough yet to change anything inside the room. It is only a suggestion. A quiet possibility. No one wakes. No one notices. In rural homes, the same gentle stillness stretches across wide land. Fields remain dark, but not as deeply as before. The sky above them feels slightly less heavy, as if it is beginning to open slowly from within. Inside a farmhouse, a family continues to sleep in shared warmth. The room is close, simple, and steady. The presence of others nearby creates a quiet sense of comfort that remains even in unconscious rest. A child shifts once, then becomes still again. The movement is natural, unremarkable, part of the rhythm of sleep that continues without interruption. Outside, the wind moves faintly across the fields, then fades. Even the air seems to hesitate now, as if it is waiting for something just beyond reach. In towns, gas lamps are still present, but their importance is fading with each passing minute. Their light no longer defines the streets. It simply lingers within them, weaker than the growing suggestion of morning. Stone paths begin to show the faintest variation in tone where darkness is loosening. Windows reflect a softer sky, though no one inside them is awake to see it. In industrial neighborhoods, silence holds steady, but it now carries a different quality. It feels less like the absence of activity and more like a pause between two states of life. Factories remain still, their structures dark and unmoving. Inside nearby homes, young workers continue to sleep without awareness of the change happening beyond the walls. Their rest is deep, shaped by long hours of physical labor, and it does not easily break. Breathing remains slow and even. Bodies remain still. The shared rooms are quiet, filled only with the presence of sleep itself. Dreams are now almost gone. They appear only as faint impressions, barely forming before dissolving again. The mind no longer holds onto them. It releases them easily, as if preparing to return to waking life without resistance. Above everything, the sky continues its slow transformation toward morning. It is still not light. Still not bright. But it is no longer the same sky that held the night at its deepest point. There is a softness now at its edges. A gradual thinning that cannot be rushed. Time continues forward, but it no longer feels heavy. It feels stretched, like something approaching completion without needing to be announced. In one small room, a young girl breathes gently in her sleep. Her hand rests near her face, her body still and relaxed beneath the blanket. The room around her remains unchanged, holding its quiet shape as it has throughout the night. Nothing interrupts her rest. Nothing pulls her back. Only the slow, steady approach of morning exists beyond her awareness. Across towns, villages, and fields, Victorian youth remain asleep in the same shared rhythm. Their lives, shaped by routine and repetition, continue even in rest. Work and rest, activity and silence, all forming a continuous cycle that carries them through each day without disruption. And now, at the very edge of night, everything holds in a final moment of stillness. Not yet morning. Not fully night. Only the quiet space between, where the world rests one last time before the light begins to return. The final edge of night lingers now, so thin that it almost feels like the world is holding its breath. Darkness is still present, but it is no longer complete. It has softened into something lighter, something that no longer fully hides the shape of the world beneath it. Inside the homes, sleep remains undisturbed. It is deep and steady, carrying every young body through the final stretch of the night without effort or interruption. In a quiet town bedroom, a young boy sleeps with his arm resting loosely across his blanket. His breathing is slow, unchanged. The faint early light that touches the window does not reach him in any meaningful way. It exists outside the room more than inside it, as if it belongs to another layer of time. The room itself feels unchanged from the night before. Objects remain in their places. The air is still. Even the smallest details seem preserved in the calm of early morning hours. No one wakes. No one stirs. In rural homes, the land outside is beginning its slow return toward visibility. Fields that were once completely lost in darkness now show faint outlines. Trees appear less like shadows and more like shapes waiting to be fully revealed. Inside a farmhouse, a family continues to sleep in shared warmth. The closeness of the room remains steady and familiar. The rhythm of breathing fills the space like a soft, continuous presence. A child turns slightly, then becomes still again. There is no awareness of the shift happening beyond the walls. Only rest. Only quiet. Outside, the wind moves once more, but it is weaker now. It feels less like movement and more like a gentle passing thought across the land. In towns, the gas lamps remain, though their role is almost finished for the night. Their glow is faint compared to what is beginning to appear in the sky. The streets they once defined are now shaped more by the slow return of light than by their own illumination. Stone surfaces begin to lose their deep shadows. Windows reflect a softer, cooler tone. The world is slowly changing its expression, though still without sound. In industrial neighborhoods, silence continues, but it is no longer as deep as before. It feels thinner, as if the space between night and morning is beginning to open. Factories remain still, their presence quiet and unmoving. Inside nearby homes, young workers sleep on, their bodies heavy with rest. The long day of labor has fully released its hold on them. There is no tension left in their sleep, only stillness. Breathing continues evenly. Movements are rare and small. Even dreams have faded almost completely now, leaving only a sense of emptiness that feels peaceful rather than incomplete. Above everything, the sky continues its transformation. It is still not morning, not yet light in a way that can be clearly seen, but it is no longer the deep night that held the world earlier. There is a softness growing across it. A gentle unfolding that suggests what is coming, even if it has not yet arrived. Time moves forward without urgency. Without announcement. Without awareness from those below. In one small room, a young girl sleeps quietly, her face calm, her body still beneath the blanket. The room around her remains unchanged, holding the final stillness of night like a memory that has not yet ended. Nothing interrupts her rest. Nothing breaks the silence. Only the gradual, almost invisible approach of morning continues beyond her awareness. Across the Victorian world, youth remain asleep in countless homes, carried through the final moments of night by the same steady rhythm that has shaped their entire lives. Work, routine, rest, and silence flowing together without sharp edges. And now, as the night reaches its final breath, everything holds in a calm suspension between darkness and light. Not yet morning. Not yet fully night. Only the quiet turning point where the world waits, gently and silently, for the first soft arrival of dawn. Now the night feels almost finished, though it does not end all at once. It fades slowly, like ink spreading thinner across water, losing its depth while still remaining present. The Victorian world stays quiet, but the quiet has changed. It is no longer heavy or deep. It is light, fragile, and full of gentle expectation. Inside the homes, sleep continues in its final, steady form. There is no movement of thought now. No drifting dreams that linger. Only rest, simple and complete, as if the body has fully accepted the long rhythm of night and has nothing left to do but remain still. In a townhouse, a young boy lies beneath a blanket that has settled perfectly around him through the night. His breathing is soft and even. His face shows the calmness of uninterrupted sleep. The faint glow near the window has grown slightly stronger, but it does not yet reach the bed. The room feels suspended in quiet. Not empty. Not active. Just held. No one wakes. In rural homes, the fields outside are beginning to show clearer shape. The darkness is no longer absolute. It is breaking apart slowly into softer tones, revealing the land piece by piece. Inside a farmhouse, a family continues to sleep in shared warmth. The room is still, but not frozen. It breathes in its own way, through the slow rhythm of multiple sleepers, each unaware of the others except through closeness and presence. A child shifts slightly, then rests again. The movement is almost like a continuation of silence rather than a break from it. Outside, the wind moves gently across open land, carrying the last traces of night with it. It is not strong. It is not urgent. It simply passes, as if it has finished its task. In towns, gas lamps are now faint companions to the growing light. They no longer define the streets. Instead, they seem to retreat quietly into the background as morning begins to form beyond them. Walls take on softer detail. Roofs become more defined. The world slowly returns to shape. In industrial areas, silence remains, but it feels different now. It is no longer the silence of deep night. It is the silence of waiting, of transition, of something about to change but not yet fully present. Factories remain still, their structures dark and unmoving. Inside nearby homes, young workers continue to sleep deeply. Their bodies rest without tension, shaped by long hours of labor and repetition. Sleep here is not fragile. It is strong, steady, and necessary. Breathing continues evenly. Rooms remain close and shared. The presence of others is felt even in sleep, not through awareness, but through proximity. Dreams have nearly disappeared now. Only faint impressions remain, like the last echoes of thoughts dissolving into silence. There is no structure left to them, no story, only fading fragments that vanish before they can be remembered. Above the sleeping world, the sky continues its slow return. It is still not bright, not fully open, but the darkness is no longer complete. It has softened into something that feels like a memory of night rather than night itself. Time continues forward gently, without force, without sound, without interruption. In one quiet room, a young girl sleeps peacefully beneath her blanket. Her face is relaxed, her body still, completely at ease within the final moments of night. The room around her remains unchanged, holding the last quiet shape of darkness before it begins to dissolve. Nothing disturbs her. Nothing calls her. Only rest remains. Across towns, villages, and fields, Victorian youth continue sleeping in the same shared rhythm. Their lives, built on routine and repetition, flow even into this final hour of night. Everything rests together, waiting for morning not with awareness, but with natural certainty. And now, at the very edge of transition, the world holds in a soft, suspended stillness where night and morning meet but do not yet separate. Not yet light. Not yet darkness. Only the quiet moment where everything waits, gently, for the first breath of day. The night is almost gone now, though it does not disappear in any sudden way. It simply thins, slowly and quietly, until it feels more like a memory than a presence. The Victorian world remains still, but something in the stillness has changed. It feels softer, lighter, as if the weight of darkness is no longer fully holding the land. Inside the homes, sleep continues, deep and unbroken. There is no sense of time within it now. No awareness of how long the night has passed or how close morning may be. Only rest remains, steady and complete, as if it has settled into the very shape of the body itself. In a small town bedroom, a young boy sleeps on his side beneath a blanket that has stayed in place through the long night. His breathing is quiet and even. The faint light near the window has grown slightly stronger again, but it still does not reach him directly. It exists beyond the room, like a distant promise that is not yet fully formed. The air inside the room is still, familiar, unchanging. No one wakes. No one moves. In rural homes, the land outside begins to show itself more clearly. Fields that were once fully hidden now carry visible outlines. Trees no longer feel like shadows alone, but like shapes returning to the world after a long absence. Inside a farmhouse, a family remains asleep in shared warmth. The room is close, simple, and steady. The rhythm of breathing fills the space gently, blending into a single, continuous presence. A child turns slightly, then becomes still again. The motion is small enough to feel like part of sleep itself rather than an interruption of it. Outside, the wind is nearly gone now. It passes only in faint moments, as if it is no longer needed. The world is preparing to shift into a new state, and even the wind seems to step back quietly as it happens. In towns, gas lamps remain lit, but their glow is fading into the growing presence of morning. They no longer define the streets. Instead, they exist within them, like small remnants of the night that is nearly over. Stone roads begin to show more detail. Walls take on clearer form. Roof lines become more defined against the slowly brightening sky. Everything is returning, little by little, to visibility. In industrial neighborhoods, silence still holds, but it is now softer, more delicate. It feels less like absence and more like pause, as if the world is holding itself still for just a little longer before movement begins again. Factories remain dark and unmoving. Inside nearby homes, young workers continue to sleep deeply. Their bodies rest heavily after long hours of physical labor. There is no resistance in their rest, only the natural stillness that comes after exhaustion. Breathing remains slow and steady. Rooms remain close and shared. The quiet presence of others continues to surround them, even without awareness. Dreams have almost fully disappeared now. Only faint traces remain, and even those dissolve before they can take shape. Sleep is no longer layered with imagination. It is simply rest, clear and uninterrupted. Above everything, the sky continues its slow transformation toward morning. The darkness is no longer complete, but neither is light fully present. It is a space between, a gentle unfolding that cannot be rushed or stopped. Time moves forward without urgency, without awareness, without sound. In one small room, a young girl lies still beneath her blanket, her face calm, her breathing soft. The room around her remains unchanged, holding the final quiet of night like a fading echo. Nothing disturbs her sleep. Nothing reaches her rest. Only the slow approach of morning continues beyond her awareness. Across the Victorian world, youth remain asleep in countless homes, carried by the same steady rhythm that has shaped their days and nights. Routine, labor, rest, and silence blending into one continuous flow that now reaches its softest point. And now, at the final edge of night, everything rests in a quiet stillness where darkness is nearly gone, but morning has not yet fully arrived, holding the world gently in the brief, peaceful space between the two. The world now rests within the quietest moments before dawn. Night has not completely disappeared, but it no longer feels powerful. Its shadows remain in corners, beneath trees, between buildings, and along distant roads, yet they seem softer than before, as if they are slowly retreating from the land. Across Victorian towns and villages, the silence continues. It is a familiar silence. A silence that has visited every night for countless years. A silence known by farmers, factory workers, servants, students, shopkeepers, and children alike. Inside the homes, sleep still holds its gentle place. Young people remain wrapped in blankets, sheltered from the cool air beyond their windows. The long night has carried them safely through darkness, and now they drift within the final layers of rest before morning begins its slow arrival. In one narrow brick house, a young boy sleeps beside his brother. The room is small. The ceiling slopes slightly. The floorboards beneath the beds have been worn smooth by years of footsteps. A chair stands quietly near the wall. A folded coat rests upon it. Everything remains exactly where it was left the evening before. Nothing has changed. Yet something feels different. The air itself seems lighter. The room seems less hidden. The darkness no longer feels endless. Outside, the first birds have not yet begun to sing. The streets remain empty. The town remains asleep. But morning is closer now than night. Across the countryside, fields wait beneath a sky that is slowly becoming easier to see. The outlines of hedges appear. The shapes of trees become clearer. Farm paths that vanished into darkness a few hours ago now faintly emerge once more. Inside a farmhouse, a young girl sleeps peacefully. Her hands rest beneath a blanket. Her breathing remains steady. Her face is calm. The room is shared with brothers and sisters who sleep nearby. Each child rests within the same quiet world. The same silence. The same gentle pause before another day begins. Victorian youth often lived close to one another. Bedrooms were rarely large. Privacy was limited. Space was shared. Beds were sometimes shared as well. From a young age, many children learned to exist within a world where family members were always nearby. The sounds of breathing. The movement of blankets. The occasional turning of a sleeper during the night. These things became familiar comforts rather than disturbances. Even in sleep, community surrounded them. Beyond the windows, dawn continues its slow approach. The sky changes so gradually that no one notices. There is no sudden brightness. No dramatic arrival. Only a gentle easing of darkness. A patient unfolding of light. In industrial towns, chimneys stand quietly against the horizon. Soon smoke will rise from them once more. Soon factory whistles will echo through the streets. Soon workers will begin another day. But not yet. For now, everything remains still. Young workers continue sleeping in crowded houses nearby. Some have only a few more years of childhood left. Others already spend long hours working alongside adults. Victorian society often expected responsibility at an early age. Time moved quickly. Childhood could feel brief. Yet within these demanding lives, young people still found moments that belonged entirely to them. A conversation while walking home. A game played in an alley. A favorite book borrowed from a friend. A quiet hour spent watching rain strike a window. Small moments. Simple moments. But meaningful ones. As the world waits for morning, those moments seem to linger gently within memory. In another home, a young apprentice sleeps deeply after a long day spent learning a trade. His hands are rougher than they were a year ago. His shoulders are stronger. His routine is becoming familiar. Day after day he learns through repetition. Watching. Practicing. Repeating. The Victorian world values patience. It values endurance. It values steady progress over sudden achievement. Young people grow up surrounded by these ideas. Even their leisure often carries a purpose. Reading to improve knowledge. Practicing music to build discipline. Helping with household tasks. Learning useful skills. Time is rarely viewed as something to spend freely. Instead, it is treated as something valuable that should be used carefully. And yet, despite this, young people remain young. Curiosity remains. Imagination remains. Friendships remain. The desire to explore remains. Even within strict routines, childhood quietly finds its place. Outside, the sky grows slightly brighter. Not bright enough to wake anyone. Not bright enough to change the world. Only enough to soften its edges. A distant field becomes easier to see. A rooftop becomes more defined. A church tower emerges from shadow. Everything appears gradually. Patiently. As if the world itself wishes not to disturb those who are still asleep. Inside countless homes, breathing continues softly. Blankets remain warm. Rooms remain still. The final moments of night stretch onward. And within those moments, Victorian youth remain suspended between yesterday and tomorrow. Yesterday's lessons. Yesterday's chores. Yesterday's conversations. Tomorrow's work. Tomorrow's routines. Tomorrow's responsibilities. All of it waiting quietly beyond sleep. For now, there is only rest. Only stillness. only the gentle rhythm of another night coming slowly to its end. And across the Victorian landscape, from crowded city streets to distant country farms, the world waits peacefully beneath a sky that is no longer fully dark, but not yet fully awake. The first true hints of dawn now begin to gather along the horizon. They arrive so gently that the sleeping world remains unaware of them. The change is not dramatic. It is not a sudden flood of light. Instead, it is a slow softening, a gradual lifting of darkness from fields, rooftops, roads, and rivers. Across Victorian England, homes remain quiet. The long night still holds most people in its embrace. Inside small bedrooms, shared rooms, attic spaces, and farmhouses, young people continue sleeping peacefully, suspended in the final calm moments before another day begins. In one village home, a young boy lies beneath a heavy blanket. His room is simple. A small washstand sits near the wall. A narrow window faces the road outside. A pair of boots waits neatly beside the bed. Those boots will soon carry him through another day of errands, chores, and responsibilities. But for now, they remain untouched. The room remains still. The day has not yet arrived. Outside, the village itself appears almost frozen. The road is empty. The cottages are silent. Garden gates remain closed. Even the birds seem hesitant to begin their morning songs. The world feels balanced perfectly between night and day. In rural areas, fields slowly emerge from darkness. Long rows of hedges become visible. Stone walls reveal their shapes. Trees that stood as shadows throughout the night now begin to show their branches once more. A faint mist lingers above damp grass. It moves slowly, almost lazily, as if it too is reluctant to leave the quiet comfort of night. Inside a farmhouse, several children sleep in the same room. Their lives follow the seasons. Spring planting, summer growth, autumn harvest, winter repairs. The rhythm of the land shapes everything around them. Even leisure follows the calendar of nature. During busy seasons, free time becomes scarce. During quieter months, evenings may allow more opportunities for reading, sewing, storytelling, or simple conversation. Victorian youth often learned early that time itself changed throughout the year. Some days belonged almost entirely to work. Others offered small spaces where relaxation could quietly appear. As dawn continues its gradual approach, the sky brightens slightly more. Not enough to wake anyone. Only enough to reveal more of the world waiting beneath it. In towns and cities, rows of houses become clearer. Brick walls gain color. Chimneys gain shape. Windows reflect faint traces of the growing light. The streets remain empty. The silence remains unbroken. Yet beneath that silence, life waits. Soon shopkeepers will open doors. Soon factory workers will begin walking to work. Soon schoolrooms will fill with students. Soon kitchens will fill with movement and conversation. But none of that has begun yet. For now, the world remains still. Inside a modest city home, a young girl sleeps beside her sisters. The room is crowded but familiar. A small chest stands against one wall. Several dresses hang carefully nearby. Everything is arranged with practicality. Space is valuable. Nothing is wasted. Victorian families often made careful use of every corner of a home. Young people grew accustomed to sharing rooms, sharing belongings, and sharing responsibilities. From an early age, they learned cooperation simply because daily life required it. As a result, much of their leisure was shared as well. Reading aloud together. Playing simple games together. Walking together. Working together. Even moments of rest often took place in the company of others. The idea of spending long hours alone was unfamiliar to many. Life was lived collectively. Family remained at the center of daily experience. Outside, the first bird finally begins to sing. Its voice is soft, brief, almost cautious. Then another answers from farther away. The sounds drift across the quiet landscape, becoming part of the morning's slow arrival. Still, most homes remain asleep. Blankets remain warm. Rooms remain dark enough for rest. The transition continues patiently. In industrial neighborhoods, dawn reveals rows of buildings standing closely together. Their outlines become sharper. Their windows become visible. Their streets begin to emerge from shadow. Inside nearby homes, young workers continue sleeping deeply. Many Victorian youths carried responsibilities that would seem heavy by modern standards. Some worked in factories. Some apprenticed in workshops. Some helped support entire families. Yet despite these demands, they remained young people finding small spaces for friendship, curiosity, and enjoyment whenever possible. A shared joke during a lunch break. A favorite place along a familiar street. A treasured book read by candlelight. A game played before supper. Pleasure often appeared quietly. Briefly. Hidden between obligations. As the sky brightens further, details continue returning to the world. A church steeple appears clearly now. A distant field shines faintly with morning dew. The roofs of houses reflect the earliest traces of daylight. Everything feels fresh. Still untouched by the noise and movement that will soon arrive. Inside countless homes, sleep remains deep. Young people continue resting peacefully, unaware of the changes unfolding outside their windows. The night has almost completed its journey. Morning has almost begun its own. Between them exists this brief and beautiful moment of balance. A moment where nothing demands attention. Nothing requires effort. Nothing interrupts the calm. Only quiet breathing. Only gentle stillness. Only the soft arrival of a new Victorian day waiting patiently beyond the edge of sleep. The morning continues its slow approach. Light now rests gently along the horizon, spreading across the land with remarkable patience. It does not rush into the world. Instead, it arrives in layers, touching distant fields first, then rooftops, then quiet streets that have remained empty throughout the night. Across Victorian England, most homes remain peaceful. The final moments of sleep still hold their place. Inside bedrooms both large and small, young people continue resting beneath blankets that have kept them warm through the long darkness. Their breathing remains slow. Their dreams, if any still linger, are faint and distant now. The world outside is becoming visible once more. But inside, night remains for a little while longer. In a small cottage near the countryside, a young girl sleeps beside a narrow window. Through the glass, the first pale colors of dawn begin to gather. The fields beyond are covered in dew. Hedges form dark lines across the landscape. A stone path winds quietly between neighboring homes. Soon she will wake. Soon she will help begin the day's work. There may be water to carry. Breakfast to assist with. Animals to tend. Rooms to tidy. But those responsibilities still wait beyond sleep. For now, the morning simply watches from outside. Victorian youth often entered the day gradually rather than suddenly. In many homes, there were no loud alarms. No electric devices announcing the start of morning. Instead, people woke to natural rhythms. The growing brightness beyond windows. The sounds of movement elsewhere in the house. The crowing of roosters. The ringing of church bells. The familiar habits of family members beginning their day. Morning itself became the signal. And because of this, the transition from sleep to activity often felt gentler than one might imagine. Outside, birds are singing more confidently now. Their voices drip through villages and towns alike. A few windows begin reflecting brighter light. Mist lifts slowly from fields. The world seems to stretch itself awake. In one modest town house, a young apprentice continues sleeping. The room around him remains quiet. A work jacket hangs from a peg near the door. A cap rests on a shelf. Simple objects waiting patiently for use. His apprenticeship shapes much of his life. Long hours. Careful observation. Repeated practice. The Victorian world values mastery earned through patience. Young people learn that skill develops slowly. A carpenter's apprentice learns one task at a time. A printer's apprentice learns one process at a time. A tailor's apprentice learns one stitch at a time. Progress comes gradually. Like dawn itself. Steady. Reliable. Patient. As morning light increases, more details emerge across the landscape. Stone bridges appear above quiet streams. Church towers rise above villages. Factory chimneys stand against a sky growing brighter by the minute. Everything becomes clearer. Yet the atmosphere remains peaceful. The rush of daily life has not yet begun. Inside homes, blankets still hold warmth. Rooms still hold silence. The final gift of night remains. In Victorian households, leisure often depended greatly upon social class, location, and family circumstances. For wealthier youth, free hours might include reading, drawing, practicing music, collecting natural specimens, or taking supervised walks through gardens and parks. A piano lesson could occupy an afternoon. A carefully chosen novel could provide days of quiet enjoyment. A sketchbook could become a treasured companion. For working-class youth, opportunities were often different. Free time might arrive only after chores were finished. After work was completed. After responsibilities had been met. Yet enjoyment still existed. A game in the street. A walk with friends. An evening story. A local fair when one visited town. A holiday celebration shared with family. These simple pleasures often carried great importance precisely because they were limited. They were not constant. They were cherished. Outside, the sky grows brighter. A soft golden tone begins touching rooftops. Dew sparkles briefly on grass. The first thin threads of smoke rise from a few chimneys as early risers begin preparing breakfast. Still, many young people remain asleep. The morning is patient. It does not demand their attention immediately. In a rural farmhouse, a boy sleeps deeply after days spent helping with seasonal work. His hands have become familiar with tools. His feet know every path across nearby fields. The countryside shapes his childhood. The changing seasons shape his understanding of time. Spring brings planting. Summer brings growth. Autumn brings harvest. Winter brings quieter indoor tasks. Each season offers different responsibilities. Different routines. Different opportunities for leisure. Life moves with nature rather than against it. As the sun slowly climbs higher beyond the horizon, shadows begin shortening. The colors of the world strengthen. The darkness of night becomes only a memory resting in distant corners. Yet the calm remains. The day has not fully begun. Not yet. Inside countless homes across towns, villages, and cities, Victorian youth continue sleeping peacefully through these final moments before waking. Soon they will return to routines. To schools. To workshops. To farms. To errands. To lessons. To duties both large and small. But for now, they remain suspended within the last quiet chapter of night. And outside their windows, a new morning unfolds slowly across the Victorian world, bringing light to familiar streets, familiar fields, and familiar lives that will soon begin again. Morning now rests gently upon the Victorian world. The darkness has almost entirely withdrawn, leaving behind a soft light that spreads across rooftops, fields, rivers, and roads. The land seems to emerge slowly from sleep, revealing familiar shapes that have waited quietly through the long night. Yet inside many homes, sleep still lingers. The final moments of rest remain precious. Blankets still hold warmth gathered during the night. Pillows still cradle tired heads. Rooms remain peaceful, protected from the growing brightness outside. In a small village cottage, a young girl sleeps near a window where pale morning light now touches the edge of the floor. The light moves slowly, almost carefully, as if it does not wish to wake her too soon. Outside, the village is beginning to stir. A gate opens somewhere in the distance. A rooster calls again. The faint sound of footsteps appears briefly on a nearby road. The world is waking. But inside the cottage, sleep continues. Victorian mornings often began early. For many young people, particularly those living in rural communities, the day started soon after sunrise. There were animals to feed, water to fetch, fires to prepare, and household tasks waiting patiently for attention. The rhythm of daily life left little room for delay. Yet these first moments of morning often remained calm, quiet, unhurried. The world seemed to understand that waking was a process rather than an event. In towns, the first signs of activity begin appearing more clearly now. Thin trails of smoke rise from chimneys. Shopkeepers prepare for another day. A horse cart rolls slowly along a cobbled street, its wheels creating soft echoes between rows of brick buildings. The sounds remain gentle. Nothing feels rushed. Inside a modest city home, a young apprentice still sleeps. The room is small but familiar. A wash basin stands near the wall. A wooden chair holds clothing carefully folded the evening before. A pair of work boots waits patiently beside the bed. Everything is prepared. Everything is ready. Only the sleeper remains in the final embrace of rest. Victorian youth often learned the importance of preparation from an early age. Clothes were arranged before sleep. Tools were cared for. School materials were organized. Tomorrow's needs were considered before the day ended. These habits created a sense of order that carried through daily life. Even leisure often followed patterns. Reading happened at certain times. Games appeared when responsibilities allowed. Visits with friends occurred when schedules made them possible. Life moved according to rhythms established by family, work, and community. Outside, sunlight grows stronger. The colors of buildings become clearer. The green of fields becomes richer. Stone walls reveal details hidden during the night. The world feels fresh and newly revealed. Yet traces of nighttime calm remain. A quiet river reflects the brightening sky. Morning mist drifts across low ground. Birdsong continues from hedges and rooftops. Everything feels gentle. Everything feels balanced. In wealthier households, young people may still be sleeping comfortably while servants begin preparing the day elsewhere in the home. Breakfast tables are arranged. Rooms are tidied. Curtains may be opened to welcome the morning light. Schedules await. Lessons await. Activities await. Even among the upper classes, childhood is often structured carefully. Hours are planned. Education is prioritized. Character is cultivated through routine. Free time exists, but it is rarely left entirely unshaped. Victorian society places great value upon productive use of time. For working-class youth, mornings often arrive with greater urgency. Responsibilities begin early. The household depends upon everyone's contribution. A young girl may help prepare breakfast. A young boy may assist with errands before school or work. Tasks are shared. Effort is shared. The day belongs to everyone. Yet even within these demanding schedules, moments of personal enjoyment continue to exist. A favorite path walked each morning. A friendly conversation before lessons begin. A few pages read from a beloved book. Small pleasures remain important. They bring color to routine. They bring warmth to ordinary days. As sunlight spreads farther across the landscape, more homes begin to wake. Doors open. Windows lift. Voices appear softly. The Victorian world slowly transitions from stillness into activity. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. But gradually, like the unfolding of a flower. Inside one farmhouse, a young boy finally begins to stir. Not awake yet. Only shifting slightly beneath his blanket. Morning has reached the room, but sleep still holds him gently. For a few moments longer, he remains suspended between two worlds. The quiet world of dreams and rest. The busy world of responsibilities and routine. Outside, the countryside grows brighter. Fields shine with dew. Streams reflect the sky. The first workers begin moving along familiar paths. A new day has begun. And with it comes another opportunity for Victorian youth to navigate the balance between duty and enjoyment, between expectation and curiosity, between work and the small moments of happiness that quietly brighten everyday life. The morning continues to unfold. The world continues to awaken. And countless young people remain just a little longer in the peaceful stillness that exists before the day fully begins. The morning light now spreads comfortably across the Victorian landscape, touching villages, towns, and cities with a gentle brightness that seems to grow stronger with every passing minute. The long night has finally slipped away, leaving behind only faint traces of shadow beneath hedges, beside walls, and in the narrow corners of quiet streets. Across the country, homes are slowly waking. Some are already alive with movement. Others still cling to the final moments of sleep. Inside a modest village cottage, a young boy finally opens his eyes. For a few seconds, he remains still. The room feels familiar. The wooden ceiling above him. The blanket pulled close around his shoulders. The faint morning light entering through the window. These things greet him before the day does. He listens quietly. Somewhere in the house, he hears movement. A chair being shifted. A door opening. The soft sound of footsteps. Morning has arrived. Soon he will rise. But for this brief moment, he remains suspended between rest and responsibility. Many Victorian youths knew this feeling well. The first moments of waking often belonged entirely to them. The day had not yet claimed their attention. Tasks had not yet begun. Expectations had not yet arrived. There was only the quiet awareness of being awake. Outside, the village continues its slow transition into activity. Smoke drifts from chimneys. Birds move between rooftops and garden fences. The sound of distant voices appears now and then, carried softly through the cool morning air. Nothing feels rushed. The day is still young. In towns and cities, a similar awakening unfolds. Rows of brick houses stand beneath brightening skies. Shop signs become visible. Windows reflect sunlight. Streets that were empty an hour ago begin to welcome movement once more. A baker prepares fresh bread. A milk cart moves along a familiar route. Workers begin their journeys. The Victorian world slowly returns to life. Inside one city home, a young apprentice finally sits up in bed. His room is small, simple, practical. He rubs sleep from his eyes and listens to the sounds beyond the walls. The day ahead is already waiting. There will be work to learn, mistakes to correct, skills to practice. The steady repetition of apprenticeship will continue. Yet even within such structured lives, young people often discovered ways to make ordinary days feel meaningful. A favorite conversation during lunch. A walk home beneath evening skies. A few minutes spent reading before bed. These moments were small, but they mattered. Victorian youth rarely expected constant entertainment. Pleasure was often found in brief experiences rather than endless availability. As a result, simple things carried greater value. A holiday celebration. A community fair. A visit from relatives. A special meal. A new book. Each event stood out clearly against the routine of daily life. Outside, the morning grows warmer. Sunlight reaches deeper into streets and fields. Dew begins disappearing from grass. The coolness of dawn slowly retreats. In rural areas, farms are beginning their daily routines. Animals are fed. Tools are gathered. Work begins with the steady pace that has shaped countryside life for generations. Young people participate in these routines naturally. Responsibility is not viewed as unusual. It is simply part of life. Many children learn practical skills through observation and repetition rather than formal instruction. They watch. They imitate. They practice. Over time, tasks become familiar. Competence grows quietly. The Victorian world values this gradual learning. Patience is respected. Persistence is respected. Time itself is viewed as something that should be used wisely. Because of this, leisure often carries a sense of purpose. Reading develops knowledge. Music develops discipline. Crafts develop skill. Even recreation is frequently expected to contribute to personal growth. Yet childhood continues finding room to exist. Friends continue gathering. Games continue appearing. Curiosity continues flourishing. Young people remain young people, regardless of the expectations surrounding them. In one village, several children may meet while walking towards school. Their journey becomes part of the day's enjoyment. Conversation fills the road. Observations are shared. Stories are exchanged. The walk itself becomes a small social event. In a city neighborhood, a group of boys might spend a few precious minutes playing before lessons begin. A simple game. A friendly challenge. A brief escape into imagination. Soon responsibilities will return. But not quite yet. Morning still allows these small freedoms. As sunlight continues spreading across the Victorian world, more homes fully awaken. Breakfasts are prepared. Tables are set. Families gather. The quiet stillness of dawn gradually transforms into the gentle activity of day. Voices replace silence. Movement replaces stillness. Routine replaces rest. And throughout it all, Victorian youth step once again into lives shaped by duty, structure, family, and community. Yet hidden within those routines are countless small moments of pleasure. Moments easily overlooked by history. Moments that rarely appear in official records. Moments that mattered deeply to those who lived them. A laugh shared between siblings. A favorite corner of a garden. A familiar story told again. A few minutes spent doing nothing at all. These quiet joys accompany them through the day, just as surely as responsibilities do. And as the morning continues to brighten, the Victorian world moves steadily forward, carrying its young people into another ordinary day filled with work, learning, companionship, and the small, precious pleasures hidden between them. The morning has now fully arrived across the Victorian world. Sunlight rests upon rooftops and chimneys. Village roads are awake. Town squares are beginning to fill with movement. The quiet stillness of dawn has gradually given way to the familiar rhythms of another ordinary day. For Victorian youth, the hours of sleep are over. The routines of life begin again. In a small countryside cottage, a young boy pulls on his boots while seated beside the door. The leather is worn from years of use. The laces have been repaired more than once. He ties them carefully, knowing they will carry him across muddy paths, grassy fields, and village roads before the day is done. Around him, the household is already active. A kettle warms above the fire. Breakfast is being prepared. Family members move through familiar tasks with little need for conversation. Everyone knows what must be done. The routine has been repeated countless times before. Outside, sunlight glimmers on morning dew. The village appears fresh and clean. Thin trails of smoke drift upward from chimneys. A cart rolls slowly along the road. A dog watches from a doorway. Everything feels steady. Everything feels known. Many Victorian youths experienced mornings like this throughout their childhood. Days often began not with entertainment, but with preparation. There were responsibilities waiting. Lessons waiting. Work waiting. Even before leaving home, many young people contributed to the functioning of the household. A girl may help prepare breakfast. A boy may gather fuel. Water may need carrying. Animals may need feeding. Small tasks filled the early hours. These responsibilities were not usually viewed as unusual or unfair. They were simply part of life. Part of belonging to a family. Part of contributing to a household. Yet within these routines, young people often found small moments that belonged entirely to them. A quiet view through a window. The warmth of fresh bread. The sound of birds in a nearby tree. A few moments of conversation before the day truly began. Simple pleasures existed everywhere. One only had to notice them. In towns and cities, children begin moving through the streets toward schools, workshops, shops, and factories. The roads become busier with each passing minute. Footsteps echo along stone paths. Voices drift through the air. Storefronts open. The city stretches itself awake. A young apprentice walks quickly through narrow streets, carrying his midday meal wrapped carefully in cloth. He knows the route by heart. Every corner is familiar. Every building part of a landscape he sees almost every day. As he walks, he passes other young people. Some are heading toward school. Some are beginning work. Some are assisting family businesses. The Victorian world expects much from its youth. Responsibility arrives early. Independence often arrives early as well. Many young people learn to navigate neighborhoods, complete errands, and manage practical tasks long before adulthood. This independence shapes how they spend their limited free time. When opportunities for leisure appear, they often happen outdoors. Streets become meeting places. Open fields become playgrounds. Riverbanks become places for exploration. The world itself becomes entertainment. In rural communities, children sometimes spend rare free afternoons wandering familiar paths through fields and woodlands. They collect interesting stones. They watch birds. They follow streams. They observe the changing seasons. Nature becomes both classroom and recreation. Without realizing it, they learn about weather, animals, plants, and landscapes simply by spending time among them. In towns, entertainment takes different forms. Young people gather wherever space allows. An empty lot. A courtyard. A quiet street. Games emerge from imagination rather than purchased equipment. Rules change easily. New games appear and disappear. The important thing is not the game itself but the chance to be together. Friendship often becomes one of the most valuable forms of recreation available. Conversation fills countless hours. Stories are exchanged. Observations are shared. Dreams are discussed. Laughter appears unexpectedly. These moments rarely leave historical records, yet they form a significant part of everyday life. Inside Victorian schools, lessons are beginning. Rows of students sit at desks. Books are opened. Pens scratch across paper. Teachers move between aisles. The atmosphere is orderly and structured. Education is increasingly valued during the Victorian period, though experiences vary greatly depending on class and location. For some students, school represents opportunity. For others, it exists alongside work and household responsibilities. Yet even within classrooms, young people find ways to create small moments of enjoyment. A whispered comment. A shared glance. The satisfaction of mastering a difficult lesson. The anticipation of seeing friends during breaks. Childhood continues to exist, even within strict environments. As the morning progresses, sunlight grows brighter. Shadows shorten. The coolness of dawn begins fading. The day settles into its familiar pace. Across the Victorian world, countless young people move through routines that history often overlooks. They are not famous. They are not powerful. They leave behind few written records. Yet they make up the majority of Victorian youth. Ordinary boys and girls living ordinary lives. Helping families. Learning skills. Building friendships. Finding small joys wherever they can. Their leisure is often limited. Their responsibilities are often significant. But enjoyment still exists. Not as constant entertainment. Not as endless freedom. But as brief moments of comfort, curiosity, companionship, and wonder scattered gently throughout everyday life. And so the morning continues, carrying Victorian youth forward into another day filled with routines both familiar and demanding, while small pleasures quietly appear along the way, hidden between chores, lessons, work, and the steady passage of time. As the morning continues, the Victorian world settles fully into its daily rhythm. The freshness of dawn begins to fade. The sun rises higher above the rooftops and fields. Streets that were quiet only a short while ago now carry a steady flow of movement. Horses pull carts along cobbled roads. Shop doors open wider. Factory gates welcome workers. Schoolyards gradually fill with young voices. The day has begun in earnest. For Victorian youth, these hours are often the busiest part of the day. Responsibilities take center stage. Time is organized. Tasks are expected. The freedom of childhood exists, but it frequently shares space with obligation. In a rural village, a young girl helps her mother in a small kitchen where the morning meal has only recently ended. Plates are being cleared away. Water is being heated. Breadcrumbs are brushed from a wooden table worn smooth by years of daily use. Sunlight enters through the window, illuminating tiny particles of dust drifting quietly in the air. The room feels warm, comfortable, familiar. The girl has performed these tasks many times before. She knows where everything belongs. She understands what must be done. No lengthy instructions are necessary. Victorian children often learn through participation rather than explanation. They became capable by doing. Day after day. Year after year. Gradually, ordinary tasks became second nature. Outside, the village continues its gentle activity. A blacksmith's hammer rings faintly in the distance. A farmer walks toward a field. Laundry hangs in small gardens behind cottages. Life moves forward with calm predictability. Many young people grow up surrounded by this rhythm. The repetition creates familiarity. The familiarity creates comfort. And comfort often becomes its own form of happiness. In towns, young apprentices are already hard at work. Inside workshops, sunlight filters through windows coated with dust and age. Wooden benches hold tools carefully arranged by skilled hands. The smell of sawdust, ink, leather, metal, or cloth fills the air depending on the trade. A young apprentice watches an experienced worker closely. Observation is important. Patience is important. Learning happens slowly. Mistakes are corrected. Skills improve little by little. The process can be demanding, but it also provides a sense of progress. Each day brings small improvements. Each week brings greater confidence. Many Victorian youths spend years developing abilities that will eventually define their adult lives. The path is long, but it is clear. Meanwhile, classrooms across the country continue their lessons. Students sit in neat rows. Books are open. Teachers speak. Pens move steadily across paper. The atmosphere is structured, yet within that structure, small moments of personality remain. A student glances toward a friend. Someone suppresses a laugh. A small success brings quiet satisfaction. Even in disciplined environments, youth finds ways to express itself. The human desire for connection remains. Outside the classroom windows, life continues. Clouds drift slowly overhead. Birds cross the sky. Trees move gently in the breeze. Sometimes a student may briefly lose focus, watching the world beyond the glass for a moment before returning attention to the lesson. These small moments of wandering thought belong to every generation. As the morning advances, streets become busier. Merchants arrange goods outside shops. Customers begin arriving. Deliveries are made. Conversations fill the air. Young people moving through these streets witness countless small scenes each day. A musician performing in a public space. A vendor selling fruit. A craftsman displaying finished work. The ordinary activity of society becomes entertainment in its own quiet way. Observation itself becomes a pastime. Victorian youth often spend considerable time simply watching the world around them. There is much to see. And seeing costs nothing. In wealthier households, the morning may involve lessons at home. A tutor arrives. Books are prepared. Subjects are studied carefully. Education is considered important preparation for the future. Young people practice reading, writing, languages, mathematics, history, and music. Schedules remain organized. Expectations remain high. Yet even here, small pleasures emerge. A favorite subject. A beautiful illustration in a book. The satisfaction of learning something new. Curiosity provides its own reward. Outside, the sunlight grows stronger. The cool air of early morning has mostly disappeared. The day feels established now. Confident. Steady. In a village field, several children passing between errands pause briefly to speak with one another. The conversation is short. Simple. But meaningful. Friendship often exists within the spaces between responsibilities. Victorian youth rarely possess unlimited free time. Because of this, moments shared with friends become especially valuable. A few minutes together can brighten an entire day. A familiar face can make routine tasks feel lighter. These connections form an important part of childhood, regardless of era. As the hours continue, work, study, and household duties occupy much of the day. Yet beneath all these responsibilities runs another current. A quieter one. The search for enjoyment. Not endless amusement. Not constant recreation. Simply the small pleasures that make ordinary life feel richer. The warmth of sunlight on a wall. The smell of fresh bread from a bakery. A favorite path through town. The sound of laughter nearby. The satisfaction of completing a difficult task. The comfort of familiar routines. Victorian youth often discover happiness in these modest experiences. Their lives may be structured. Their schedules may be demanding. But moments of joy continue appearing throughout the day, hidden within the ordinary. And as the morning slowly approaches midday, the Victorian world continues moving forward at its steady pace, carrying its young people through lessons, labor, friendships, and countless small experiences that together shape the quiet texture of everyday life. The morning gradually drifts toward midday. The sun climbs higher, and the long shadows that stretched across roads and fields earlier begin to shrink. The cool freshness of dawn has given way to a gentle warmth. Across the Victorian world, the pace of daily life continues steadily, guided by routine, expectation, and habit. For many young people, several hours of work, study, or household responsibility have already passed. The day feels fully underway. In a country village, sunlight falls across a narrow lane bordered by hedges and stone walls. The road is familiar to everyone who lives nearby. Children have walked it thousands of times. Farmers know every bend. Horses follow it almost without thought. A young boy carrying a small bundle walks along the lane with practiced ease. He is not rushing. There is little reason to rush. Victorian life often moves at the speed of necessity rather than urgency. Tasks are completed because they need to be done. Journeys take as long as they take. Patience is woven quietly into daily existence. The boy pauses briefly near a stream. The water moves gently over smooth stones. Sunlight reflects across its surface. For a moment, he simply watches. Nothing remarkable happens. The stream continues flowing. A bird lands nearby. The breeze moves through the grass. Yet these small pauses often become important parts of childhood. Moments when responsibility briefly loosens its grip. Moments when observation becomes a kind of leisure. Many Victorian youths find enjoyment not in grand adventures but in simple attention to the world around them. Nearby, fields stretch beneath the brightening sky. Farm work continues steadily. The rhythm of rural life rarely changes quickly. Animals must be cared for. Crops must be tended. Tools must be maintained. Young people learn these routines early. Over time, The routines become familiar enough to feel almost comforting. The repetition provides structure. The structure provides stability. In towns and cities, meanwhile, the atmosphere feels somewhat different. The streets are busier. The sounds are louder. Movement is constant. Yet even here, daily life follows recognizable patterns. A young apprentice sweeps the floor of a workshop. A student concentrates on a lesson. A shop assistant organizes goods on a shelf. Everyone contributes in some way. Victorian society places great importance on usefulness. Time is expected to serve a purpose. Because of this, leisure is often viewed differently than it might be today. Free moments are not necessarily expected to be filled with constant activity. Sometimes leisure simply means a pause, a rest, a conversation, a chance to observe the world. Inside a classroom, sunlight enters through tall windows. Dust particles drift through the beams of light. Students continue their lessons. Pens scratch quietly across paper. The room is orderly, calm, predictable. For some young people, education opens doors to opportunities that previous generations never experienced. Books introduce distant places. History introduces forgotten lives. Science reveals hidden patterns in nature. Learning itself becomes a source of fascination. Even when lessons are difficult, curiosity quietly persists. Outside, church bells ring faintly across a town. Their sound drifts through open windows and along narrow streets. People hear them without stopping their work. The bells are simply part of the landscape, part of the rhythm of life. Victorian youth grow up surrounded by these familiar sounds. The bells, the wheels of carts, the calls of vendors, the footsteps of neighbors. Together they create the background music of everyday existence. In wealthier households, midday approaches with its own routines. Lessons may pause briefly. A meal may be served. Children may spend a short period outdoors under supervision. Gardens provide space for walking and fresh air. Paths wind between flowers and carefully maintained lawns. The atmosphere feels orderly but pleasant. Young people observe insects moving among plants. Clouds passing overhead. Birds resting in trees. Nature provides quiet entertainment. Not dramatic. Not elaborate. Simply present. For working-class youth, opportunities for leisure remain more limited, but they still appear. A few moments during a break. A brief conversation with friends. A chance to sit in the sunshine before returning to work. These moments are often appreciated precisely because they are brief. Their rarity gives them value. As midday draws nearer, the warmth of the sun becomes more noticeable. Roads grow brighter. Fields shimmer slightly beneath the light. Rivers reflect the sky like polished glass. The Victorian world continues moving forward through its daily cycle. Morning responsibilities gradually give way to midday routines. Throughout this movement, young people continue navigating lives shaped by both duty and curiosity. They learn. They work. They help. They observe. And between these activities, they find small opportunities for enjoyment. Not endless enjoyment. Not effortless enjoyment. But genuine moments of contentment hidden within ordinary days. A friendly conversation. A favorite view. A pleasant memory. A few quiet minutes spent outdoors. These experiences may seem small when viewed from a distance. Yet together they form an important part of childhood. History often records laws, inventions, leaders, and events. but much of life exists elsewhere. In conversations that were never written down. In walks that left no record. In afternoons remembered only by those who lived them. The lives of Victorian youth are filled with such moments. Simple. Quiet. Ordinary. And as the sun continues climbing toward midday, those ordinary moments continue unfolding across villages, towns, and cities, shaping another peaceful chapter in the long rhythm of Victorian life. And now, as the day that we have followed so patiently settles into memory, the Victorian world begins to grow quiet once again. The hours have passed gently. Morning became afternoon. Afternoon drifted into evening. The sun crossed above fields, rooftops, rivers, and village roads before slowly lowering toward the horizon. The routines of the day have been completed. Lessons have ended. Workshops have emptied. Schoolrooms have grown silent. Farm tools have been put away. Shop doors have closed. The countless small duties that filled the lives of Victorian youth now rest behind them. Across towns and villages, lamps begin to glow softly in windows. Families gather once more inside familiar homes. Simple evening meals are shared. Conversations move quietly around tables worn smooth by years of daily use. The pace of life slows. The world exhales. Outside, the last traces of daylight fade from the sky. A cool breeze moves through hedges and across open fields. Church towers stand dark against the evening horizon. The roads grow emptier. The sounds of the day become fewer. Softer. More distant. In one small cottage, a young girl climbs beneath a blanket after a long day filled with chores, lessons, conversations, and small moments of happiness hidden between responsibilities. In another home, a young apprentice closes tired eyes after hours spent learning a trade that will one day become a profession. Elsewhere, a boy who spent the afternoon exploring a familiar path near a stream settles comfortably into sleep. Their names are mostly forgotten now. History rarely recorded them. No monuments were built for them. No grand books were written about them. Yet they lived. They learned. They laughed. They worried. They dreamed. And they found small pieces of joy within ordinary days. The great events of the Victorian age happened around them, but most of life was not made of great events. Most of life was made of mornings and evenings. Friendships and routines. Work and rest. Simple meals. Familiar roads. Warm rooms. Quiet conversations. The ordinary moments that rarely appear in history books, yet quietly form the shape of a life. Now the lamps burn lower. The conversations fade. The houses grow still. Across the countryside, darkness settles gently over fields and rivers. The stars appear one by one above sleeping villages. A peaceful silence spreads across the land. The world that seemed so busy only hours ago now returns to rest. And as the night deepens, Victorian youth, like countless generations before and after them, drift into sleep beneath the same sky. The same moon. The same quiet stars. The worries of the day grow distant. The responsibilities of tomorrow have not yet arrived. There is only stillness. Only rest. Only the gentle rhythm of breathing in darkened rooms. Far away, a breeze moves softly through the trees. A river continues its slow journey through the night. The world grows quieter. And quieter still. Until nothing remains except the calm presence of darkness, the comfort of sleep, and the peaceful silence of another ordinary Victorian night. Good night. And let the last distant echoes of history fade softly into the darkness.